Hello and welcome to Belfast Iconoclast. This is one in a series of special episodes recorded at the Marxism 2016 festival held down in Dublin at the start of November. The following talk, titled Revolutionary Strategy in Ireland Today, was delivered by Dr. Kieran Allen at the Marxism 2016 conference in Dublin.
We're talking about the people or profit organisation having a registered members of over 1,000 and growing. Hopefully the Anti-Austerity Alliance is doing the same. We're talking about a network of around 40 branches in many of the provincial towns in Ireland. We're talking about an organisation that has a record on all the significant struggles that have developed over the last number of years of having key activists involved, whether that's the ASTI fight, the repeal the 8 fight, or indeed the water charges fight. But in some ways more important than the quantitative growth is the actual growth of the quality. If you listen to what the, as Richard called them, the extreme centre are beginning to say about us, they have a very simple one-word attack. They are the trots. And remember something, that when they say they are the trots, they also call Jeremy Corbyn a trot. In fact, they call anybody who talks about socialism and is not going to compromise. And what the word trot means is not that we go home each night to our bedrooms and genuflect to a sort of statue of Leon Trotsky. Hopefully nobody ever does that. What we mean is we have a hardened left in Ireland, and I would argue the most hardened left in Parliament across Europe. And what do I mean by a hardened left? I mean people who, and we have differences with the Anti-Austerity Alliance, we have a difference, serious differences on the North, but in terms of real unity between us, the people who represent P4Profit and Anti-Austerity Alliance, I have absolutely no doubt about it. Their aim, and their very serious aim, is they do intend to take the wealth off the Irish capitalist class. We intend to treat Denis O'Brien and Michael O'Leary and all these people just like they treat people who are on social welfare. We want to interview them about their wealth. We want to know how they can get away with having 4 houses in Dublin 4 and still claiming to be a tax exile. And if they do not come up with a good excuse, we aim to take their wealth off them. That is what we mean by a hardened left. And therefore it's not like anything that's occurred in this country before. This is a very serious hardened left that, unlike if there was a similar incident maybe in the 80s, has had none of the baggage of believing that Russia or any of those countries, North Korea or North Vietnam, anything to do with socialism. We have never believed this. This is a hardened, revolutionary left that aims to expropriate the capitalist class. And that is something very, very serious and huge change in Ireland. Now, given that, we can talk about strategy in very different terms. For most of my life, when we talked about strategy, we talked about how do you grow from 100 to 110 to 120. How does the party grow? Now we can talk about strategy in terms of having a real influence on events and how to bring about serious changes in Ireland. And when we talk about strategy, we mean we have to look at where we are, what our methods are, and what our goals are, and what we aim to achieve in the coming period, and set realistic goals for what we can actually do. So let's start with where we are. I just want to make a case that this country is a weak link within a weakened capitalism, what Breach Smith called last night the winter of capitalism, facing major crises ahead. Let's just deal with the second part first, the winter of capitalism. Capitalism is a system of cannibalism. It's a system that goes into periodic crisis, and when it goes into crisis, those that survive gobble up the small ones, and the system gets going again. So every time you have a slump, you expect it eventually start picking up again. What's amazing about the present global situation in capitalism is this is now, 8 years after the recession. European capitalism is growing at the rate of 1.5% a year. Healthy capitalism normally grows about 3% a year. This is a sick system that is propped up by, just listen to it, 80 billion. Each month, 80 billion is pumped in to the sort of financial markets of the European Union just to get capitalism trotting on at 1.5%. This is a winter of capitalism. This is a system that is going down, is a system that is going to produce greater geopolitical and imperial conflicts in the world. And therefore, the prediction that there will be another major crisis, we don't know when, we're not crystal ball gazers, but we do think this system is going to face a major global crisis. But within that system, Ireland is a weak link. I want to really outline why I think Ireland is a weak link, because in many cases, even most Irish socialists never believed it. Irish socialists thought the revolution will happen in Nicaragua, or it'll happen in France, or somewhere exciting where there are red flags. But Ireland, how could it ever happen in Ireland? And therefore, let's understand why this country is a weak link, and why the prospect of revolution in Ireland, in our lifetime, not our grandchildren's, in our lifetime, is a real prospect. I want to really make 3 arguments why this country is a weak link. First of all, the nature of Irish capitalism is built on being a tax haven. This country is an enormous tax. We have more tax planners per head of population than any country in the world. A tax planner is somebody you pay €500 to talk to for an hour, and they'll tell you how to skip away from paying any tax. I'll give you 2 examples. We have the biggest aircraft leasing industry in the world in Ireland. Bermuda, by the way, has the biggest ship leasing or ship registration sector in the world. Why does Ireland have the biggest aircraft leasing sector in the world? 14 of the biggest aircraft leasing firms in Ireland, they pay no tax. They do nothing. They don't employ very many people. They employ a few hundred people, and yet they hardly pay any tax. If you have 1 million, you have to have 1 million, not less than 1 million. If you have 1 million and you go to Matheson Ormsby Prentice, the big snob legal firm, and you go to the company registry office and you put down your million and say, could I please register for qualifying assets, which can be anything, by the way, you pay no tax. No tax whatsoever, right? So this is how they've built Irish capitalism. And let's be honest, they have been relatively successful in their terms up to now. And the strategy has been very simple. It is, as Brian Boyle argued, it is a beggar thy neighbour strategy. In other words, that we pretend, when I say we mean the Irish elite, we are good Europeans. Come to us, you pay no tax, and we'll passport your services inside the EU, and you can get away with anything. That's the strategy. So you bring in American capital, you're part of the EU, and you offer a tax haven. And it's worked for them for 10, 20 years. They've got big problems now. The big problem is, up to now, they were so small, nobody noticed. After Apple, it will not be left like that by the EU elites for the coming period. Secondly, inside capitalism itself, precisely because they are paying out 80 billion a month to prop it going, all governments, all states begin to look at, well, where is our revenue coming from? Why are we letting why are we letting Dublin skive off revenue from Germany or France? Inside the EU itself, the departure of Britain, if it happens, means that the Irish elite lose their biggest ally in terms of tax dodging. In other words, they face problems. They face real problems in keeping the model of a tax dodging economy going. Secondly, what's becoming very evident from the most recent upsurge on repeal of the 8, we live in a country that has has been affected deeply by partition. What partition brought about was, as James Connolly predicted, a carnival of reaction where you have, at the top of each society, I mean, think of the DUP in the north. I mean, these are dinosaurs who are against gay marriage, who are, will defend people not making cakes for a gay couple and so on. These type of dinosaurs come to power claiming to represent their community in opposition to the other community. In the south, we have something slightly different. We have an elite who pretend to be liberal cosmopolitans. I mean, I don't know if you've ever canvassed on water charges, and no, well, you probably haven't knocked on a door in a big house in South Dublin, and you'd be told, of course we pay water charges, we're European. I mean, how would you not pay water charges, right? This is the type of liberal cosmopolitan elite, but behind that is the filth of Catholic fundamentalism. In this country, you cannot go to Vincent's Hospital and get a vasectomy if you're a man. We have a situation where young women cannot afford to pay, for example, a contraception, to get a bar for around €300. There is no free contraception in this country. There is in other countries, believe it or not. In this country, you have to queue up for a primary school to get your kid into a primary school, and 95% of schools are run by the Catholic Church. And if you don't have a baptism cert, you get to the back of the queue. So on one hand, we've got this fake liberal cosmopolitanism, but then when it comes to crunch, on abortion, or any of the issues, you find the Catholic reactionaries are still there. And the point is, a new generation has risen that will no longer accept that. So we now find a struggle emerging on economic issues, and now, and I believe it's very significant, the youth of this country being drawn into struggle, particularly on the issue of bodily autonomy. Thirdly, we are weak capitalism because of the nature of the political structure here. This country, I'm talking about the south of Ireland here for a minute, this country was run in a happy way in terms of the rich by the 2.5-party system. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, exactly the same. The Labour Party's only job was to hop between them and say, well, which we put in power at this time. This was the 2.5-party system that, if you like, dominated Irish politics for years. They have a problem now. They have a real problem. Because even from the point of view of the capitalists, this is not a very satisfactory situation. Enda Kenny, pathetic leader, minority government, retreating all the time, facing the type of problems we have at the moment. And therefore their only long-term solution is either Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael come together to form a government, or else Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin finally get their act together and do the business of forming a government. This is the type of situation we're facing into in the future. And therefore, all the elements of crisis are built into the situation in Ireland. Now, who is going to take on this filthy system? We should be very clear about this. This is very much part of the tradition of the SWP. We have never believed that the primary agent of change is the party. We've never said, like the Communist Party used to say, elect the Communist Party and you'll get socialism. For us, the key is, what does the working class do? It's the working class that's going to take on this system. And by the working class, we mean not just blue collar. I have a sort of part of my academic background, a pedantic opposition, objection to using the term middle class. I don't understand the term middle class. Middle between who and who? Just because somebody is a nurse, a teacher, is working in the civil service, what's the difference? I mean, you work at the moment, you're a local authority worker, you're on about 25,000, you can't pay the rent, you're being harassed by your boss. What's the difference in terms of working in a factory? So it's very clear to us, we are talking about the white collar and the blue collar section of the working class. If you want to talk middle class, you're talking about 15%, mainly Fine Gael supporters, top barristers, lawyers, top consultants, and so on, right? But the majority of this country is part of the blue and white collar working class. Now, we have to be clear about the nature of the Irish working class, because really for decades, the left has to some extent been pessimistic about the working class. The working class in Ireland were dominated by the Catholic Church. There'll never be any change in Ireland because the Catholic Church dominated the minds of the working class, was the argument for about 20, 30 years. More recently, you'll never get anywhere with Ireland because the working class soaks up consumerism. All they ever think about is, if you like, buying goods and, if you like, going shopping, and that's their main form of leisure activity. Now, we have to be clear that the working class in any country is contradictory. It has different ideas of coming together, of solidarity, but it also is pulled by the ideas of the ruling class. And what happened in Ireland was for 5 or 6 decades, a glacier, a conservative glacier, was put on the Irish working class. The Catholic Church, Fianna Fáil, the local national school teacher, how the GAA was manipulated. All of this formed a horrible, conservative culture that dominated the minds of working class people in Ireland. The point is, that is breaking, and everybody knows it's breaking. It's breaking radically, and people are moving to the left. And here's the thing. The Irish working class is different to many working classes in Europe. You go to Britain, you go to the Labour Club. The local club, you have a pint, links to the Labour movement and so on. You go to Italy, you've got a Casa Populo. You go to France, you've got the red flags and May Day. There was none of this in Ireland. None of it, because this horrible tradition dominated working class life. We're living in a situation where this is now changing, and working class people are moving to the left without this left-wing tradition, which is why they were the slowest. The Irish working class was one of the slowest to move against the austerity. People were saying, what about the Greeks and so on? They had a left-wing tradition. So the Irish were slow on it, but at the same time, the Irish working class is moving without the baggage of Stalinism, with a certain instinctive contempt for the Labour Party, with a view that, for example, people like, it's interesting, isn't it, that we talk about our heroes on the left, we've got to go back before the 1920s, or well, in the case of Larkin, a bit longer, we're talking about the early part of the century. So this is a tradition where working class people are radicalising dramatically without the baggage of previous traditions. Now, in that situation, the left has to take itself extremely seriously. And broadly speaking, we would say there's two types of a left, two types of options available to people at the moment. One is the idea that we manage capitalism. And let's be frank about this. A section of the union leaders around the Right to Water campaign believed that the next step in Ireland was to get Sinn Féin into government with a left that was tamed, willing to go along with Sinn Féin, to set about a programme that did not talk significantly about raising corporation tax or taking measures that would, if you like, begin to radically destabilise capitalism, but rather try to implement some sort of softer Keynesian programme. So that is one option you have in terms of left politics in Ireland. Now, I've got a very simple answer to this. You think about this country and how people wait so long, for example, for a hip operation. You go around doors when you're electioneering, you find there's people waiting in pain for about 3 years for a hip operation because they're poor and because they haven't got private health insurance. Now, do you think that in a tax haven society, where every single member of the rich in Ireland claims to be a tax exile, where every corporation is a tax dodger, do you think that under capitalism they're going to fund a free health service in Ireland so that people will be looked after in this country? In other words, the room for reform, for even simpler reforms, is going to bring you into confrontation with capitalism itself. So that's one option that we are not going down. We do not intend to manage capitalism. We want to take a second option, which is we want a revolution to uproot and overthrow capitalism. And in that sense, that is why, when you talk about why is the People for Profit so principled, why is AA so principled, because at the core of them are organisations that are dedicated to the overthrow of capitalism. But here we've got to also acknowledge a problem. Many of us have been revolutionaries for too many decades. There's a problem in being a revolutionary on the margins. If you like, the left in Ireland was marginalised for decade after decade, and indeed the left in Europe is being marginalised, certain forms of habits develop. You begin to see yourself as commenting on the world, that somehow the struggle for socialism is for your grandchildren's generation, that it's not really possible, there's all sorts of self-justifying alibis, that in the present situation the left cannot grow because, because different ideas are emerging and so on. You develop a certain pessimism from being on the margins. Now, what I think is important about the strategy we're employing in Ireland is that we want to obviously we're not going to manage capitalism, but we want to radically transform what the revolutionary left is about and set ambitions that are far higher than most revolutionary groups had in the past, or indeed sometimes have in other countries. And what does that amount to in practice? We, in terms of the SDP, differ from others on the revolutionary left in one key idea. We never thought that we had a programme that would inspire the working class. We never thought we'd anything like a transitional programme, that we had to go to a few books and look up what's the demands that would move working class people. We never had any of that. We were, as they say, philosophically, we were empiricists. We listened. We talked to working class people and we said, what is it that you're concerned about at the moment? That was very, very key to our understanding. And we made a distinction that Gramsci made between the good sense of working class people and the common sense. The common sense is the idea that's fed to us by the Irish Independent, by RTE, all the crap of capitalism. But there's also, and this is really crucial, and this is something that socialists, before, if you like, the catastrophe of the Second World War understood. Socialism was the expression of the good sense of the working class. Socialism is not something that arises in sociology departments or philosophy departments by reading post-constructionist books. It is something that comes from the good sense of working class people. Because guess what? If you're working class, you do understand why health should be free, why we actually have to organise things collectively and so on. And therefore, the strategy, when we talk about strategy, what do we mean by this? That we start out by articulating the good sense of Irish working class people. What does that mean in practice? If you look at how People for Profit was started, it started with people like Richard over there, began a campaign for to keep Victorian bats in Dunleary for the people. Never written in any Marxist textbook that you have to go for keep Victorian bats. We at the moment are going to run a series of meetings about car insurance. Now, I don't want people to be driving cars. I want eventually free public transport. But what are we to do with a situation where young people in Ireland pay €2,000 to drive a car because there isn't any proper public transport system? What do you say? If you're a socialist, and you might remember, but Marx was originally a student radical who read all the books about Hegel and the philosophy and Fichte and this, that and the other. Guess what? Guess when he became a real Marxist? When he took up a simple issue, why peasants have a right to gather firewood for free. That was Marx's break. That was Marx's break from philosophising into changing the world. We're moving from philosophising into taking up issues to do with car insurance. When somebody says to you, right, we're paying €2,000 for a car insurance, what are you going to do about it? Well, we say, we want a publicly run car insurance company that's not for profit. It's simple. And guess what? In a recent Claire Byrne poll, show, I think, 71% of the Irish people said, yeah, we're for that. We're for that. A car insurance company that's not for profit. When we hear, for example, on Apple, and people say to us, what are you going to do on Apple? Take the money. Just take the money. A lot of working class people understand that. And then, of course, the experts come along and try to befuddle your brain with complexities and this, that, and the other. But it's simple. Just take the money. When you have, for example, the Irish glass bottle site, 3,000 acres, symbol of Celtic Tiger speculation, and people who are going to build houses there, the people of Ringsend, the neighbouring area and so on, when you ask them, do you want expensive houses for the upper professionals, or do you want your kids to have a chance of living in the area that you grew up in and so on, and anybody else who's on the housing list? Guess what? Hundreds of people would come to meetings and say, yes, we want public land to be used for council housing. And therefore, let's just understand the method. The method of people for profit is to articulate the good sense of working class people. And when we say good sense, to use a bit of theory here, socialists have a dialectical relationship to the working class. We do not start out as the teachers. As Marx famously said, who teaches you if you're a teacher? We start by listening, talking, engaging and learning. But we also argue with the working class. So when people talk about racism or sexism, we challenge people and we're deeply principled in doing that. But that is the relationship that we intend to forge with Irish workers into the future. And therefore, this really explains what Jerry Carl was saying last night. Our aim is to make socialist ideas mainstream. And that, if you said that, say, even 2 years ago, people would say, you're off your head. But when you're talking about, I don't fully believe the opinion poll, right? When you're talking about an organisation, people for profit, anti-austerity lines, moving up to 9% in the polls and so on, if that continues, ideas that public land should be used for public housing, that we need a public state-run not-for-profit insurance company, that we need a national health service that treats everybody for free. This will become the common, not just good, but the common sense of Irish working class people. And here's our prediction. Our prediction is the more we fight on these issues, the more we come up against capitalism. That's our prediction. In this country, a tax haven, every time you make the simplest demands, I shouldn't say every time, but the general, if you like, tenor of your demands for national health service, for decent jobs, for, if you like, challenging a low-wage economy, all of that will bring you up against capitalism. And even when it doesn't bring you up against capitalism, what we emphasise continually is the only way to get it is through actual people power. So even when you win, when you do win, working class people begin to challenge the fatalism that's built into their heads by this actual system itself. One other thing distinguishes people for profit, and I'll come back to it at the end, from many other sections of the left. We talk about people power, and we apply that method in general, whether you're fighting, for example, for better, for the planning that local communities want, in terms of baths or the Casement Park in Belfast. We always talk about people power, because we want to get across to people the idea that they themselves, rather than RTDs, are what's going to bring about change. But when we talk about people power, there's a certain ambiguity. And in people power, there are different types of people power. You can march in Dún Laoghaire for the baths, excellent. You can actually drive them back, and you can win, as X Factor did do in Dún Laoghaire. But if you want to take the money off Dennis O'Brien, or you want to stop the banks being handed back into private ownership, marching is not going to do it for you. It's a start. It's very important to do it. Even sitting down in a square outside a bank isn't going to do it for you. At the core, therefore, of people power is something that is very important for us, is the question of workers' power. And that is why we do not draw a distinction between a strategy built on social movements and the working class. We don't see that distinction. We see them actually as being united. And therefore, to put it very simply, this means that one of our strategic objectives, let's be honest about this, the left is very, very weak in the Irish trade union movement. Contrary to those who think that Trot's are running the ASTI, sorry. Two, I think. We've identified two, and we're looking for more. Right? Contrary to this, the left is actually quite weak in the unions, for all sorts, because of the reasons of social partnership and so on. So we, as part of our strategic objective, as the movement radicalises, as people started out on the issue of water charges, as water, the pressure and the confidence that's grown with that is beginning in a very hesitant way to go into the workplaces, we want to put a huge emphasis on building up, if you like, support amongst the working class. And therefore I'll say on this, the ASTI strike is the most important strike for a decade, certainly a decade, right? Because what this is about, let's be clear about it, this is about Irish workers are waking up, they're saying, you talk about a recovery, but you won't give any recovery to us. It started with the Lewis people, then it went to the buses, and now the government wants to draw a line, and that is why they want to smash the ASTI. On Monday morning, the gates will be locked by the government, ordering the management board, you're not letting the teachers in here, in the hope of, if you like, driving up an hysteria against the actual teachers in order to smash them completely. That's what this is about. And therefore for us, for People for Profit, we're asking all our branches in the next week or two to put on a public meeting in the area, stop the lockout, equal pay for equal workers, and bring people around you, because it's part of what we're doing, bringing from, if you like, general people power to winning a base in the unions. And therefore, if you want to put it very simply, what's our strategic objective? You can summarise it in a few words. We want to increase the voice we have in Dáil Éireann and the Stormont Assembly. We want to significantly grow the numbers we have in the Dáil. I believe there's going to be an election next year. I think the rich in this country cannot tolerate forever the joke government that they have at the moment. There will be an election. We want to significantly increase our membership there. Not because we think elections are everything. We think at this point, in terms of the development of Irish working class people, as people move to the left, they want people in the Parliament to articulate their views, and those views have to be linked to a struggle outside. We want to double our membership. We actually want to increase to have an organisation in this country of over 2,000 people, the biggest left-wing organisation that Ireland has ever had, and we hope and we wish that the anti-austerity lines are going in the same path. We want to increase our base in the unions, to have a network of people in the unions that are really pushing for change. I mean, you look at, for example, the ASTI. I mean, the ASTI is a marvellous union. It's a union of 17,000 people. We have what? Maybe, I don't know many socialists. A few socialists got together, began to articulate democracy, the workers have to fight, and they've helped to change the union. We want that done right across the unions to build up a strong working class presence in Ireland. And here I just want to really finish on these points. In this sense, there are, if you like, some distinctive strategies we are engaging at the moment. We start from the idea of presenting a minimum programme, a minimum set of policies that come from the good sense of the working class, but we never hide the fact that to win these in their entirety, you're going to have a challenge to capitalism, you're going to uproot capitalism. And therefore when we say to people, don't pay off the bondholders, people agree with you. But I tell you, to stop paying off the bondholders, you're going to have to uproot capitalism in Ireland. So in that sense, we're using a minimum policy, but we're all the time saying it has to be accompanied by a people power and it has to be accompanied by a break from capitalism. We're also saying very distinctly that the movement in Ireland has to be organised in both communities and the workplaces. Sometimes there's a view only you can actually, that a level of radicalisation is somehow mechanically linked to the number of strike figures that occurred. I mean, if that was the case, we'd have been bunched years ago. We went through decades where workers were doing very little in Ireland, and we were forced, nobody decided theoretically or anything, we were forced to orientate on communities to build up activity and so on. And therefore we had to combine work in the communities with actually the building in the workplaces. And therefore, to finish, I want to say that we are in a situation where the left is coming back. That's obvious. You look at people like Sanders, you look at the rise of Jeremy Corbyn. But we have to say that the Irish left, as a latecomer, has a number of advantages. And the main advantage is we can learn from what happened elsewhere, and we are going to develop quite a distinct strategy that is going to exploit the weak link that is capitalism in this country. Unlike Syriza, who were a radical left, who, by the way, said similar things that we're saying. They talked about a health service, they talked about giving people free electricity. Unlike them, we are saying there will have to be a break with the EU. You will not be able to convince them by rational arguments. You have to face them down. Unlike Podemos, we're saying we're having no talk about there's neither a left nor right. People give me this stuff. In order to be popular, don't label yourself left or right. Don't talk about the working class. Just talk about the people. We're not going that route. We're going a route where we put across ideas that a lot of working class people recognise, but at the core of that is a revolutionary strategy, a hard strategy geared to bringing about a change from capitalism. And therefore, what People for Profit and the SPP is about is an activist organisation, an organisation that listens, an organisation that relates to people, that is breaking out of left ghettos, but at the core of it is this revolutionary strategy. And if you think about Ireland, I mean, people just, I went at the meeting on on the United Ireland. The idea that you could have a united Ireland, as Gerry Adams said, in 2016, where we have things staying the same in the south, you know, schools run by the Catholic Church, hospitals run by the Catholic Church, horrible neoliberal economy, that somehow would offer the prospect of bringing Ireland, we say no way. The only way we're going to see change in this country is a revolutionary strategy, and that's why I think we're beginning to make strides at the moment.
Thank you very much, Kieran, for that. So we have about half an hour for comments and questions and discussion before Kieran comes back at the end. So I'll take people as I see you. So please put your hand up if you're interested in speaking. And I would also encourage people, if you have even a question or a small comment to make, that please feel free to do so. And I would also encourage women speakers as well. It would be great to see. So.
Are we for social centres? I mean, look, I'm not saying we have a strategy to develop in the social centres. I'll just really point that out as a difference between, say, Ireland and other countries. This was a historic thing that was created over decades in these countries. The question of organising the unemployed, and this is a more general question. You see, the whole method of People for Profit is to say we don't have the answers to everything. Genuinely, we don't. I mean, I've been involved in attempting to organise the unemployed, say, 20, 30 years ago. We tried it in the local branch in Rathmines. Sometimes you get people to move and so on. The only criterion we have is if you are passionate enough about trying to organise, have a go, but then try to make an assessment. Are you bringing people with you? Because if you are simply substituting and you're doing all the leafleting and you're doing everything and nobody else is coming with you, you probably aren't going to get very far. So I think it's important that we are for trying anything as long as there's groups of people that want to fight. And that really brings me to the point that the comrade made over there, which I think is a very important point. Neoliberalism has intruded into every aspect of our society. So the example she gave is a good example. You would think collecting seaweed on a seashore. I mean, what's capitalism got to do with that? They have sold off the foreshore rights, so only a private company in designated areas get to gather the seaweed. Now, you talk about Marx and firewood in the 19th century, they're doing that in Ireland, right? And what's our answer? And you look at the question of toll roads. We live in a country where the big expansion of roads has been done by national toll roads, and guess what? When they don't make a profit, the Irish state hands them over the money to make sure they have the money to profit and so on. So we live in a neoliberalism intrudes into every area of our life. Instead of building schools, they handed it over to, as you said, the public-private partnerships, and that means you can't, if you like, add extra buildings, or you can't cut it down if the school numbers go down. So the point is, because neoliberalism, this is really what I want to make, because it intrudes into every area of life, I cannot imagine a group of socialists who haven't got something to agitate on. I can't imagine anybody saying to me, there's no chance of getting struggle going. I mean, how could that be? There must be something you can find to move people on. Now, we don't know, there's no recipe book we can consult and say, right, it says on page 7, take up the campaign for seaweed rights. But you have to use your nose and you have to talk to people, and by doing that, you are politicising people. And therefore, I want to really insist on this. I mean, I learned my politics where we said, listen, you've got to go to the factories and give out a leaflet. And we did that for years. And I'm still doing that, giving out leaflets at factories. But I don't have a mechanical relationship which says the only place you can talk to the working class is in factories. Right? That's not true. You can talk to working class people on a whole variety of issues, and guess what? You can bring people around you, sorry, I just lost my notes, who will become the core of a socialist organisation that will relate to the unions. Secondly, on the unions. What we're talking about in the unions is this. There is in Ireland 2 wings to the Irish trade union movement. I'm going to mainly talk about the South, so I know it's a bit better at this stage, but I think the model applies in the North. The wing that's controlled by SIP2, Impact, the INTO, those 3 at least, are completely in with the government. They are in with the Labour Party, they are plugged into the establishment, they oppose the water charges, and they want to see the ASTI defeated, because they care more about partnership than anything else. There's a different wing to the trade union movement, Mandate and Unite operating on both sides of the border, who are more left-wing, who've played a major role in getting the right to water movement going. But there is a problem, and let's identify the problem. They are rhetorically left, they take some left-wing actions, but they don't carry through consistently enough. When, for example, the social partnership goes through, Unite never say, let's defy it. They never do that. They say, we vote against social partnership, now we've no choice but to accept it. You look, therefore, at the numbers of workers, go on a right to water march and ask yourself, how many people were behind the Unite banner and how many people were behind the Mandate banner? It's not exactly in the hundreds. Okay? So we have a left in the unions that, if you like, is different to the partnership unions, but the base in terms of rank and file activity has shriveled because it's left rhetoric, it's often more tokenistic, and it's often battles outside the workplaces. And therefore, when we come to our strategy, I'm talking about what really happened in terms of ASTI. ASTI were people who were on the ground, in their workplaces, working at ground level in the unions, standing for democratic election, putting across a strategy of defying partnership and eventually winning it. So it wasn't simply about passing left-wing resolutions, it is about what are we actually going to do to bring about a change. When we talk about moving in the unions, we're talking about moving in that direction. Quick section on who are the working class, just to qualify slightly what something that Ed says. I think the working class are anybody who has to live on a wage. And the reason why we focus on the working class is that is where the economic power is to overthrow capitalism. You look at the government at the moment. I mean, they've spent so much effort into really, you can see them worrying and terrified what might happen on this strike at the moment. So it's people who sell their labour. But it is also, I don't believe, for example, a university professor is a member of the working class. They sell their labour, but they're not managed by other people. So for me, a working class person, whether it's white collar or blue collar, is somebody who sells, who has to live on a wage, and whose labour is controlled, managed, and, if you like, told what to do by a boss or a manager. And that is the core group of people we are aiming for. We also want to appeal to small farmers. It is absolutely right on this. We do not have an ambition to just talk to working class people. We want to try to explain to small farmers they are being ripped off by a system of food production that's based on speculation. They're being strangled by the beef industry in Ireland, people like Larry Goodman, the great friend of Fianna Fáil and so on, who was literally strangling the situation for many small farmers. We want to win them to the left, but we're also honest enough to recognise it'll be harder to win farmers to the left than it will be to win working class people, because working class people are more likely to organise collectively and organise against the system. I want to agree completely with the point made by the person at the back. We want to expand for profit into the smaller towns in Ireland. I've just been drawn up a list before I came in here. We now have branches in Manorhamilton, in Ballyshannon, in Gorey, in Listowel, and we hope to have a branch going in Athy in the next few weeks. So the idea that we are simply a Dublin-based organisation is wrong. We want to expand right across this country, and we do not believe that, if you like, the alternative in a place like Athy, for example, is Sinn Féin. And that brings me to the question of Sinn Féin. We will work with Sinn Féin. We will defend Sinn Féin from any attacks from the Irish Independent. When we hear them going on about Gerry Adams and his terrible violent record, we say, what did you do in Shannon Airport where you collaborated with the torturers of the US and so on? We will not take any attacks from those people. We will work with Sinn Féin. We will try to draw them into campaigns when they want to draw them into campaigns, but we're going to be honest. We're going to be absolutely honest. Sinn Féin, at the moment, when it comes, for example, to the issue of repeal, says to women, you can only have abortion if you're raped, fatal fetal abnormalities, or your health. It can't just be on the basis of choice. Sinn Féin said to people, we will not push for taxes on multinationals. So we're going to oppose them, and we're going to build a more radical left. Now, if those opinion polls were correct, and I still have my doubts about it and so on, we are coming within 5 or 6 percentage points of Sinn Féin. Our long-term ambition, let's be clear about it, let's be honest about it, is to replace Sinn Féin with a genuine hard left in this country. Sinn Féin got a jump start on us, they had the media and so on, and they presented an anti-austerity agenda. I have absolutely no doubt, when you read the history of this country, that Fianna Fáil in the 1920s, between 1926 and 1932, talked a rhetoric that was more radical than Sinn Féin. Eamon de Valera said, I stand in the tradition of James Connolly. Fianna Fáil said, I want to abolish the banks. Fianna Fáil even promised, you won't believe this, but it's true, they promised to abolish a standing army as a relic of British imperialism and to his citizens' militia. This was far more radical than Gerry Adams, and look at where they are today. Every nationalist is going to become a manager of capitalism, therefore we will say that openly to people. In terms of multinationals, do they employ a lot of people? They employ, to be precise, 7% of the Irish workforce. You would think they employ everybody when you listen to the media. They employ 7% of the Irish workforce. They are making a bloody fortune here. The one figure is that this is to do with transfer price, it's a technical thing, but it is estimated that an American multinational makes about 800,000 euros per worker in Ireland. Now, we're very moderate people. We just want them to pay 12.5% to start off with. That still leaves them with 700,000. I mean, what do they want, right? So we want to just make them pay a minimum rate of 12.5% for starters. If they will they, on the basis of that, flee the country? Not as much as they say, but some may do. And let's be clear about it. We want, at some point in time, to take over, if you like, some of these big corporations, the big pharmaceutical companies. I see no reason why, for example, Pfizer or Bristol Myers Squibb should be able to exploit people, particularly poor people, by paying for a drug that they have a patent on for 20 years when that drug could be produced for a fraction of the price. I want to see a publicly owned, generic pharmaceutical industry in this country that is willing to sell and produce medicine for the poorest people in the world. So at some point, we intend... The typical caddy of the past. You grovel to the sort of the lord and the landlord and the in the land of the state. We must at some point end the grovelling that goes on in this country to multinationals. Don't do anything because you'll scare them off. You'll ruin your reputation. I mean, to hell with it. They're making so much money that it's time for us to actually, if you like, take them on. And I think when I heard, for example, Ed Byrne, the head of the ASTI, come back on the argument and say, he was asked, where are you going to get the money from? And he says, you know, those corporations, they need to be taxed more. That's the first union leader that I heard saying, we will get our money by taxing the corporations. And guess where that started? It started on the radical left. It started because people here had the courage to tackle the sacred cow of Irish capitalism. Don't touch the multinationals, right? So that we're going to make this popular, and as Brian says, we're going to normalise the discussion. We've had enough of Starbucks paying less tax than, for example, a cleaning woman or a cleaning person in Ireland. So we want to very much be upfront about that. And lastly, I just want to finish on Brian's point. Look, we have a strategy. It's a strategy that's beginning to work after all these years. But you can have a strategy, but you really need organisation. And what we are trying to do at the moment is build branches in every town in Ireland to produce a newsletter, to write that newsletter in the language of working class people, to articulate the good sense of working class people, and to encourage people to fight for themselves through people power. We want regular branch meetings. We use social media very actively. We produce 1-minute videos because we're relating to where people are at today. We want to popularise and normalise left-wing ideas. But at the core of it, and this is very important, you can popularise and normalise left-wing ideas, but if you don't know where you're going, you'll eventually sell out. And at the core of it has to be a strong revolutionary organisation that doesn't hide the fact, we never hide the fact, that there's people for profit, and you can join people for profit and not be in the SWP, that's absolutely fine. But if you really believe you should overthrow capitalism, you should also join the SWP. We say that openly. There's nothing secret, there's nothing behind this closed doors about it. It's a simple statement of strategy. You need both to try to normalise left-wing ideas, but you also have to have a revolutionary core that will go all the way and overthrow capitalism. So I appeal to people, get involved in the socialist workers.
That's it for this week's podcast. If you have any questions about anything you've heard in the podcast, drop us an email at belfasticonoclast@gmail.com or send a message on our Facebook page, facebook.com/BelfastIconoclast. Of course, you can also tweet us at BeFastIconoclast. Thanks very much for listening.